82 will be our question. Very last lesson in this book. And we will start new book next week. And, I'll let you guys in on that. Finding God when I forget, He's in control. Finding God when I forget, He's in control. 2 Samuel 2:24. 2 Samuel 2:24. Okay, let's recap from last week. The conscious, the consequences, and the choice. Conscious, consequences, and the choice. On page 78 in 2 Samuel, we find David facing what? What is David facing in chapter 24? He's facing a battle, correct? And what's going on with David at this particular time in his life? Is he young anymore? Is he an old man? Is he a seasoned man? He's a seasoned man. Is this going to be his last battle after you read chapter 24? What kind of mistake did David make here?
I trust in God.
He didn't trust God? And what did he do to make the reader believe that he didn't trust God? Oh, he did a census. Is that a bad thing? Don't you want to know how many people you got to go to battle and fight with?
It's not us still. When we're going through trials, we can't fix it. We think we could fix it, but we can't fix it. We have to trust God and let God do what He has to do. Because to me, it's a spiritual war in our life. And we can't fix it. Don't look at the things around us, what's going on. But keep our eyes on Jesus and trust Him and walk by faith and not by sight. And I think by doing that, we're going to win the battle.
Okay. Anybody else? How many battles have David just came off? It's not like David had a long stretch of nothing going on. This man has fought battles upon battles upon battles. What are some of the things in the previous chapter, in chapter 18, 19, that has happened with David and David was involved in, and Israel? Who were the Gibeonites? Some of the things that have happened in the book that we just, we're finishing up. What are some of the things that has occurred where David had to rely on God. I mean, was David able to physically, him and Israel, fight those battles on their own? Why is that the case? Although we read time and time again how large the Israelites are in comparison to their neighbors, weren't they always outnumbered? Right? So battle after battle, David has fought. Why the census? Have you ever gotten discouraged fighting and fighting a lot? You know, every time you turn around, you fix something, something else break. You know, I mean, you don't go a stretch without something happening, right? As soon as you get through solving this problem, what happens? Another problem pops up. As soon as you get through with this telephone call, the phone ring and what? There's another issue. Don't you get tired sometimes? And when you get tired, how much faith do you have? Don't you make spiritual mistakes when you get tired, just like you do physically? When you're physically tired, or do you have the ability to do the things that you generally do when you're up and about and you're strong? Yeah. I mean, you can barely move. You trip over things, right? You can't pick up things. You know, your depth perception is off. You think you at the right object and you notice that you're hitting your hand on something. You look past something when you're bending down and you bump and hit your head on the counter. I mean, all kinds of things occur to you when you're in the best physical condition. I mean, isn't that true for being spiritually tired? I mean, who wants to fight all the time? You know, if they would have acted right, they would have had to have all these things at their doorstep constantly. But if you want to be like everybody else, you're going to endure the same kind of problems that everybody else has. People don't tell you how bad things are. They just tell you the outlook of things. They don't tell you how many times they've done this and done that and can't do this and can't do that. They always make it seem like life is, it ain't that bad.
You pray that help you through the day and whatever comes up, that will let it be. But the day, sometimes everything goes crazy.
So it's tough. It's tough. And we all human and we all make mistakes. David counted these people he shouldn't have. That's just something he shouldn't have done. Now, everything that he has done, I mean, this was clear. Oops. You know, anytime, I mean, this is one of the greatest psalmists in the world that we have ever known to put pen to paper. And of all people, the very next thing on the horizon, you got to say to yourself, God is going to be with me. And it's not like he had a whole bunch of loyal people around him. What has he ended up with at this particular time in his life? What is the greatest major thing that David went through when it comes down to a military fight that you can think of without, you know, going too deep back into the story? Who's Abner? Who's David's general? Who took sides with Absalom? His son almost wiped out this kingdom. And what did David have to do? David had to what? Regain the kingdom. Was that easy? The majority of these people switched allegiance to David. And they went over and they jumped camp. Now he's once again right back where he started from with Saul, trying to piece everything together and get folks' minds back, including his. And then here we go again. Something else is on the horizon. He foolishly count the people. Why do you think David counted the people? Just think about it in his shoes.
So he was concerned. His concern was that he was going into battle, or would go into battle with less people. He felt he was outnumbered, right? So after counting this, he's feeling like he's outnumbered, forgetting that he's been outnumbered many times, right? If you think back from when he was a shepherd boy with Goliath and the slingshot. I mean, he forgot. He forgot what God had done to him. At this stage in his life, he has become more self-reliant, forgetting what God had done. So he's counting the people, because for him, he's going to count the cost as, if I go into battle and I have less people than my opponent, we are going to lose, forgetting that all he has to do is call upon God, and God has delivered him in the past. So that level of faithlessness at a time when he needed it most was disturbing to God.
Your son goes up against your kingdom, you lose some people. Some folks stayed with you. You don't have a big army. Y'all, you don't have a big army. You know what I'm saying?
God was always with him.
Yep, God was always with him. And he looks around and he said, look, let me make a count here. Forgetting that all the time he did all this running, God was always with him. But here we go again with a moment where sometimes even the best of us get bogged down with the things that we see instead of what God has done in our life. Bottom of page 78, it says sometimes we place more trust in our ability to count than in God's ability to conquer. Sometimes we just forget what happened in the rearview mirror, like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, and know with assurance that what lies ahead of us, God is already there. He already had taken care of it, just participants. So sometimes it's tough for us as individuals.
It's hard to see that, because when we're no different from David. I'm sure everybody has their own story to tell. But when we are up against the wall, everything seems so bleak. It's just like you can't see, there's like no way out, right? Just like there is no way out as far as you can see with your human eyes. And it's not until you put on your spiritual glasses that you can see beyond that. But when you're functioning with only what you can see in front of you, because now what God has to do is when he's working overtime, he's working triple time. He might have to change the heart and minds of 20 people just to change an outcome for you that you can't see. So he's always working and moving, and I think that's the part we forget. So even when things happen, even when our backs are up against the wall, when we call on God, he is going to start moving pieces and people. Right? People get moved around, places, people get moved around, people get hindered. It could be the slightest thing when you think about it, not even knowing what it is, accidents, work, your job, your employer, even when it's your fault, right? You're getting ready to be fired for something you know you did, and there is no way out. You don't see any kind of redemption or mercy coming from certainly your superiors. The only thing you can do is pray and pray that God changes the hearts and minds of those that are going to decide whether or not you have a job tomorrow. There's some sort of reprimand with that. But I say that to say that there's so many moving parts and pieces that we don't always see. And when we're just looking at things physically, I think that's when you have your greatest testimony, because after that, with your spiritual eyes, you can really see how God literally moved those mountains in your life just so that the outcome would be good.
You ever been in a congregation where key person leaves, dies, move away, and that person was very instrumental in the growth of that congregation, and you stayed? How did it make you feel? Minister, elder, preacher, they leave, or a couple that has been involved with the bus ministry or BDS or something like that leaves, and a key member of the team is no longer there. How does that make you feel? I mean, you look around and you do what? First thing you say is what? Who's gonna what? Step in and do that work. God is always in control of everything. So to look at your situation and walk by sight, not by faith, knowing that God doesn't get worked up about things. It's God who moves people around. It's not people, you know? And God always has something else in store for something that is missing, because God never is going to go lack in the ministry of reconciliation. There's going to be somebody else who's going to come along, who's going to bring along to do just as good as that couple or that person was doing in that particular work or ministry. You don't see that, but God will always raise somebody up, just like before Moses, it was a Joshua. God is like that. When it comes down to his particular work, things in the church are going to get done by people in the church. And whether you stay or leave, I've always said and will always maintain, you can go when you want. You can go anywhere you want to go. It's something entirely up to you. Just like Peter said about the Holy Spirit and giving it to him. It's yours to give. You don't get worked up about things and worked up about what people say and do. When it's time for you to move, or it's time for you to, just go and do something else somewhere else. As long as you're in the Church of Christ and you're doing God's work, you're fine. And somebody else will come along and do the work that you no longer do. And for a congregation that don't work, sometimes you need them. You need people to lead to get you to see the things that you're not doing and the things that you need to do for the Father to do it.
I think I want to give you that this testimony. Yes, in my early stage in Christianity, some things my father faced up before he was a Christian, after he was a Christian. It was looking real bad. I think I've given you the story 5 years ago. And everybody, even members in church, said, this is the end of it. Don't worry. This is going to happen. That is going to happen. And Simeon and all was upset with me because all I was doing was crying. And before he was a Christian, all I could think that he's going to die, and he lost both ways. And I used to be praying and asking God, please, give him a next chance. Because the incident that happened, said day, and a friend was supposed to have a Bible study with him. That very said day, that incident took place. And it was very serious. And anyhow, cut the story short, everybody said that was it. God give them another chance. This is why I have faith in God. God give him another chance. He baptized, he asked God. And he started working in the ministry, doing evangelizing people, bringing a lot of people to Christ. And what took place is not man caused it. I know that God is one hand in that. But it will end up the way in which it ended up. The second time Second time, I was up here when the incident happened again. The cousin Alan, he was there and he taking care of everything and so on. And all I said to my assistant was this, pray. And she want the best of this and the best of that, and you tell me to pray and this and that and that. I said, listen to me. The best doctor is the Lord. The best lawyer is the Lord. We have to. God knows the truth of everything. Put it in his hand. Fast and pray. She broke on me and everything. And then a few months, this thing going on. Alan told me, said, everything done. Everything done. And all I could have said, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. And I know the things that God do for me, and I know what he did with my father especially. And that gave me more faith and more confidence and more trust in the Lord. One on him in any way, any form, any fashion. I could give you testimony, things that before I came to this country, after I came to this country, what the Lord have done for me. And he still do it. And that gave me the encouragement to continue to serve God all the time. He is alive. He stayed with us. He would never leave us. But we have to count our blessing.
Yeah.
The little one, the little things. We have to start counting the blessing, the little ones.
It says in question number 1, when you face a crisis, what are you tempted to come? Some of us are very good at recognizing our faults, but we don't recognize how to get jump started. David wasn't a jump start. He always had to have somebody tell him something to get him motivated into getting past the repentance stage. Some of us are very good at saying, I'm sorry to God, but we don't know what to do after that. We don't know how to put one foot forward and try to move past what has happened. David was like that. He wasn't able to jumpstart himself to get going because he was surrounded by so much stuff. His world was so bombarded with people and people doing the wrong thing, saying the wrong thing. And like I said, when you look at his history and look at who he is, some of us are like that. We go back home to a mess and we don't know how to jumpstart ourselves. We good when we're away from our environment, but when we go back home, we can't seem to get motivated to do the right thing because the majority of the things that are around us simply doesn't build an atmosphere of spirituality. And we end up saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing, and feeling the wrong way. Christians go through that all the time when they feel alone. Because they don't spend enough time with God in prayer and faith to get out of that and get themselves to the next level. It's just like being in prison. Once a person in prison, mind is in jail, the person is incarcerated. As long as the person is not incarcerated here, they can physically be behind bars. It doesn't affect them. So once the mind is shut down, there's no motivation. And once that crisis come in and start pushing in, it gets close to you, you don't know what to do. So when you face a crisis, what are you tempted to come? What are you tempted to come? Ella gives an illustration of what happened and many, many other things that have happened. We're talking about our lives. Our lives are just like David's life. Everything that happens to us should be what? Should be a motivator, shouldn't it? Once God bless us with this, something else happened to us. Shouldn't we say, praise the Lord? We should be able, through certain circumstances in the past, in the rearview mirror, to be able to say, Lord, you handle this. Sometimes, brothers and sisters, waiting is respecting God. Honestly, I can't put it any simpler. Sometimes in your life and in my life, when things come around, waiting is respecting God. Because God knows one thing about you, like he knew about Job. You're not leaving. That's a good place for you to be. It's a good place for me to be. No matter what happens to us, we're not leaving God. So no matter what crisis comes, God can rest assured his throne when we look over to Jesus. They can wait. They're not leaving us. It's meaning absolutely nothing. Because when I come, I'm coming out of time. And they're going to know that. And they're not going to embarrass you and I in the Holy Spirit by doing something that don't make no sense with Satan. Yeah, okay, because I remember last time it was victorious. And it didn't take them long. God has those kind of conversations about it. It didn't take them long. So once you come to that point in your life in a crisis, and every time one comes, you're going to recognize it for what it is. You're going to say, I can get through this because of what he did for me. You hear people say that all the time. The older and older you get, the more testimonies you have as you confess what God has done for you. God likes to hear it. He don't like you to do the census. He like you to understand he knows numbers better than you. You think God didn't know how many people was around David?
You go and Gideon.
Come on. You think God goes to sleep on the job? Huh?
So I think, when we face crisis situations, it's having if you are close to God, and what I mean by that, if you are in the habit of calling on God for assistance, it's not that the crisis doesn't impact you negatively, it's not that you don't hurt from the crisis, it's not that you're not up all night because of the crisis or crying because of the crisis, so it's not that, but if you are in the habit of praying to God, it is during those times that you would reach out to God and ask specifically for, because I think we have to ask God for what we want him to do. When we're in a crisis, what do we want God to do? And I don't, everybody's crisis is different. So my prayer to God when I'm in a crisis can be very different from your prayer. Not that, whatever you're praying for, your crisis, your situation, my prayer to God could be very different in that. So, and very specific in terms of deliverance from that crisis. So I look at it as if I'm accustomed to praying to God, when I am in crisis mode, my first thing or thought is to go to God in prayer. And what am I asking for? And what is it that I'm asking for? So when Mommy passed away, or we were getting to that point, what was I asking for at the time? Right? Was I asking for God in those last moments to raise her up, a miracle? Was that what I was asking for? Was I asking for him to help me to get through this so that I'm not so heartbroken? Like all of those things, we're asking God, or should be asking God for things that are very specific and not just sit idly by and just say, oh, there was a crisis in my life and I'm just going to let it, we'll see, let the chips fall where they may, because I think God wants us to rely on him and have faith in him. So when we are in crisis, we're asking him and we can see his deliverance. Because if you're not asking for anything and you're just sitting back there, so where is your testimony and your deliverance?
When you're trying, and I'm trying to plan something, in the planning stage in your prayer life, where is God? Where do you put God in your planning stage? When you pick the pen up and you get ready to write something down and say, look, 5 years from now I want to move. Or 6 months ago they had hinted around to you taking this position over when this guy retires or this lady retires. Your name has came up. Where do you start planning God? When your finances are cliffside, where do you start planning God in your plan? Because sometimes we take the job, then we pray. You ever done that? You take the job and then you pray to God about the decision you already made. See, that was David. And that's us too. $10,000 more a year means a lot to anybody's budget. But we don't count the cost for the 10 grand. A friend of mine said, I didn't know I had to be away from home, do all this traveling. I didn't see the job in its totality. I didn't know my wife was going to start complaining. I didn't know we was going to start spending more money. It's like I didn't even get the $10,000 increase because we just changed. But see, you didn't count the cost. See, a lot of things you and I simply don't understand the power of Satan. Satan can just bring nice little gifts too. Y'all don't think he can? Satan can bring you nice little gifts too. Where you have to be a discerner on what is best for you at your current spiritual condition and what is not best for you. Because sometimes things that you think is going to do more than abundant for you, you're not ready for it, nor is your family. Nor is your family. Because you be in a position where a lot of money will change in 30 days. A lot of money can change your household and it can change you. And then you look around, you're like the $1 million lottery winner. Year later, you ain't got a dime. Because you weren't ready for that blessing in the first place. And a lot of us don't understand it that way. We don't understand how important it is to wait on God so God can teach us, train us, help us to get ready for something great in our life. Because right now, we're not trained for that. God is right. How much time do you spend talking with God so when things happen to you, crises don't look like a crisis? I'm in an emergency room, and I'm saying in the emergency room, what is it, Lord? You're in control. How many times have we said that? You're in control. You're in control. You got to do what you got to do here. That's a crisis. That's a moment in your life. But you already know God is going to do something because he always did in your life. He's not leaving you there. See? So when it's time to hit the rock instead of speaking to the rock, when it's time to do a census instead of letting God take care of the numbers like he always have done in the past, don't let the crisis take you out of your spiritual mode. So let's spend more time talking with God so we can be participants in how he navigates our lives. So things don't look so bleak. For a Christian, things shouldn't look so bleak. Amen? I mean, like, I know it sounds like I'm casually saying these things, but things shouldn't look so bleak for a Christian because as cold as it may sound, the worst case scenario is what? You going to heaven? You got to die to get there. You see what I'm saying? So if these things you can't do anything about, you can't control, isn't it best to let God take care of those things so you don't be out of control? That's the attitude that we should have. My Father is going to fix this because right now I don't have the ability to do that. I'm not that good. I don't know how to fix this problem in the first place. I don't know what the outcome will be. God asked me, he said, what shall I do? My son is in jail. What shall I do? I said, don't spend no money. Don't spend any money. Because you know why? He's already in jail. Is he guilty? Yeah. Don't spend no money. Because you're not going to get it back. You get wound up for what?
Maybe you just wanted them out.
That's all well and good. But is that the best thing for someone who's guilty?
I don't know. I mean, so this is what when I say about praying for specific people. Because only God knows, right? Because people are being guilty of many things. It doesn't mean just because you're guilty of something that whatever the outcome or consequences is going to be, that it's going to be something that's permanent. It may not be that. So I think everybody's guilty on some level for something. We all have been guilty. So, but people are also repentful and remorseful. So And I think that plays a role in that as well. I think that the request is being able to say to God, asking God for what you want out of the situation. And then always never, regardless of your will, it's really God's will ultimately. And letting God know that, Lord, I respect what you're going to do, but this is what I would like. But if this is not your will, if this is not your plan, Jesus prayed for what he wanted God to do, right? He wanted this cup to pass from him. He did not want to have to go to the cross if he didn't have to, but that wasn't God's will. He said, not my will, but thy will. And so we too pray for things we want to see come to fruition. But we also pray that, Lord, if it's not your will, because you ultimately want to please God. So whatever his will is, then it's going to be that.
Sometimes we have to be still, be quiet, and wait. And if we have done something wrong, we must pay for what we've done wrong. Because it's wrong. Simple as that. It's wrong. Whatever the outcome is going to be, whatever the sentence is going to be, whatever the judge is going to say, my Father has already worked that out, depending on my heart toward what I've done wrong. And that's it. You don't have to get broke trying to do something that I gotta go and fix. These are the consequences of my action. So don't get broke. Save that money. Because you're gonna have to take care of me while I'm there. You're gonna have to send me stuff. You're gonna have to come visit me. I am wrong. Find out if I'm wrong first. Find out if I'm wrong first. If I tell you, Mom, I'm innocent, okay, spend some money. But if I tell you, Mom, I did that, okay, son, now it's time to face the music. Now it's time.
This is more 1 and 2, but this concept of this chapter is very high level. Certain religious communities focus heavy on meditation and trying to get themselves from the physical to a spiritual realm. I don't think modern Christians spend enough time doing that. I hear a lot of Christians, especially men in the church, telling me what they're doing, how many Bible studies they have. I want to know, are you transforming yourself? You could have 1,000 Bible studies and baptize 10,000 people and never stop being the bad whatever in your life. So I think of Romans 12, right? And I'm going to read NIV and ESV just to put it into modern vernacular. Romans 12, chapter 1, in the NIV, the first verse, Paul says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Let me read that again. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, right? Meaning that you deserve to get wrong, but you didn't get it. So in view of that, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, right? Because of what Jesus did for you, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. In ESV in verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So what's my point? This is transformation. This is high level. You can get to heaven without going to upper deep level of Christianity by doing the right thing. This is not just the doing the right thing, right? David didn't die. The people didn't die, right? God picked the lesser of the three things because he knew if he would have put the 3 years or the 3 months curse on him, which is in this chapter, the people would have been susceptible to the enemies. He did a 3-day curse, right? So the people had a short and harsh punishment, right? Okay. You can get to heaven just doing basic Christianity and skip this, what we're talking about. This is high level. This is saying rain gonna fall on the just and the unjust. That means bad things gonna happen to everybody, whether I'm a good person or not. The only thing I can control when bad things happen is where will my mind be? Will my mind forget where I'm going and who I am? Or will my mind go into physical mode and think fleshly? What does that mean? Peter was walking on water. His mind was not bound by his physical limitations, or he never would have got out the boat. His mind made his body believe he could do something that was physically impossible. So his mind transformed. His mind superseded his physical limitation. When his eyes looked at the waves and the storm and he lost sight of Jesus, he started realizing, wait, I'm doing something that is impossible physically. So his mind went from spiritually minded, which Paul talks in the earlier part of this book in Romans, to fleshly minded, meaning fleshly, there's no way I can walk on water. So he started to sink. That's what happens to us. Sunday morning, our mind is spiritual. We start doing things that we normally wouldn't do, which is behave. None of us in here behave when we not at church. Don't lie. Oh, I've been Christian this long. I'm a good stop. You doing in here, you at your best behavior. And sometimes we still not good. So think about that. When you leave, your mind reminds you, this happens to teens all the time when they come from camp or youth rallies. Your minds remind you, you just a teen. You shouldn't be trying to not do things that every teen in the world does drugs. Every teen in the world have sex. So you start thinking, yeah, now youth rally, y'all had me thinking I was more than what I was. And then you start to think, I'm just a... That's what happened to David. His mind left, just the 2 chapters before, this spiritual high, and physically he thought God promised to multiply 100-fold the troops. I want to see if he really did that. So his mind went off of spiritual to physical. That's the difference between knowledge and wisdom. People in the world, not just Christians, have a lot of Bible knowledge. They have a lot of Bible knowledge of book, chapter, and verse. But how come they can't walk on water, though? Or how come they have to count their troops? Because they don't have application. Application is transformation. That means even if I'm physically in jail, mentally, when they turn the lights off, I'm in Tahiti. That's when people say that's why reading is fundamental, because as a kid, I can be dead poor. But when I read a book, my mind leaves my physical limitation and I start thinking I can be more than what I currently am. That only comes through fasting and praying. But each person in this room be honest with themselves. In the last 7 days, how much time have you spent transforming yourself? I didn't say nothing about Bible study, how much money you give, if you pick up somebody from church, if you go to work, if you have kids. No. In the last 7 days, how much time have you spent yourself trying to transform your mind and be renewed the way Paul just, we don't spend that much time doing that. That's why when bad things happen, I start counting physically because I haven't spent enough time transforming spiritually. Yes, we all have the Spirit of God in us as baptized believers, but how much time do I spend tapping into that? See, when I start saying things like that, Most of the time, people start thinking of mysticism and all these other things, and they discount it. Again, I hear a lot of what Christians talking about what they're doing, and doing is great. But my Bible just here told me what true worship was. It wasn't about how much you were doing, because Paul said even if he could do everything and still haven't loved, he failed. So we have to get to the point where we can transform our mind and not be conformed to this world, so that by testing, we would be able to discern what the will of God is. Because that's what the world's question is when we say trust and obey. People want to know, what's the will of God? Yes, to be a good person. Yes, that sounds cute. I'm talking about the will of God in Ellis's life for this week. I'm not talking about doing the right thing. I know God wants me to do the right thing. Is it God's will that I get married this year? Is it God's will that I buy this car? Is it God's will? See, that's what people struggling with, because they want to know, what do God want me to do on a daily basis? David knew who God was as a concept, but it's just counting. We talking about war now. So he slipped up. We do this same thing David is doing moment by moment. And my argument would be, because we spend too much time when we gather, even collectively, trying to grab only the knowledge. There's people out here that went to divinity school that know more Bible scriptures than me. But guess what? They don't have application. It's not about if you can quote a Bible scripture to me, is do you live that Bible verse, right? So when you hear about trust and obey, yes, that's a nice song. I love when we sing. But am I living trust and obey? In order to live that, where you're able to let go and let God in every situation, even physical situations like what David is doing, you're going to have to go to Romans chapter 1 and 2, and you're going to have to present yourself a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing. But most importantly, you're going to have to not be conformed to this world, not act how other people act or how you would normally act, but to be transformed by the renewal of your mind, so that through the trials and tribulations of life, that's why he says that by testing, you would be able to discern what the will of God is. The difference between David in this situation and Bathsheba, it says that by the time he got to the senses, he knew he messed up. By the time it got to the end of the senses, he knew this was a bad idea. All Gad did was say, you got to pick one of these three conclusions as consequence for your sin. See, after a while, once you've been so in sync with God, just like a relationship, you know in the middle of a sentence, oh, I made my wife or husband upset. Before you finish, sometimes you could start a joke and you know halfway through, oh, I might as well finish the joke, but the person is already upset. That's where David was at this point, but he lost sight. That's why I always talk about us. Start thinking of examples of yourself. Try to force yourself tonight to think of an example of you in this scenario, not another person, because it's harder. It's easier. I can tell you a lot of situations where I can see the answer to all 6 of these questions in somebody else. I could see the 6 of these questions in some of the people in this room. But can I see these 6 questions in Ellis? See what I'm saying? So my point is, this is upper level Christianity. This is what Paul strived to be. This is where Jesus, the night where he was going to leave, said, be of good cheer. I overcame this world. So when we start looking at these things, it all goes down to how we spend our time. In a 7-day period, how much time are you spending renewing your mind, trying to be transformed versus doing physical things? Most of us spend more than 90% of our time, I would argue, a day doing physical things. Why are we confused when we're not spiritually minded? Because that only comes, Jesus said, through fasting and praying. But if I only pray for my food, thanks for waking me up, thanks for getting me home safely, I only fast when you tell us to fast, how will I grow? We think it's Bible study. It's more than studying the Bible. It's living the Bible. And that, to me, is the disconnect the world has had since Jesus left.
Unfortunately for us as human beings, you know, Beulah alluded into by talking about, I'm at the season part of her life right now she was able to go back and talk about some things of where God has brought her and what he has done for her. Donna has done a faith check in saying that there were times when I had to rely in prayer on God. Crisis does that to you. Every crisis that David had in his life made him aware of what he was doing wrong. So you got to have that forward momentum. Unfortunately, 70,000 people lost their lives off that 3-day plague. And those people weren't innocent. These are the folks that came from that Absalom rebellion. These are the people that came from that Sheba rebellion. Remember, God don't pick on people. Okay, these are the people that went against David as king. Okay, so they got their due just. Okay, and just understand when you start looking at the rest of these questions, and for time's sake, David choose to take his punishment straight from God rather than from men. He already know that he was going to be abused by men. He was going to be humiliated. So just, Father, I know you're going to be merciful. Man is not going to be merciful. You know, so, you know, in what ways has God been a rock and fortress in your life? Well, you can only tell me that through Christ. You know what I'm saying? You only tell me that every time something dramatic happened in your life, you can tell me how God brought you out. And through Christ is where a lot of us learn. A lot of us learn how to have more faith in God when we can't do it ourselves. Amen? I mean, that's just the way it is. We're human beings. And if we could do the things that we're supposed to do, we wouldn't need Jesus. We wouldn't need Jesus. We wouldn't need prayer if we could do the things that we're supposed to do. So, you know, just look at it that way. Remember that all the things that occur to us daily, weekly, monthly, are things that's going to happen as long as we're under this sun. And we should be able to rebound from these things simply because of what God has done for us in our lives and what he has helped us through. Because God don't have those kinds of problems and issues. And we get ourselves in trouble by not walking with God. And God comes right along in prayer and say, I can fix this. And boy, do he have to fix it. It's just a mess. We get ourselves in such a mess. All right, so we're in there. I'll give everyone a call and let you know what we're going to be moving on to for next week. And we thank God for all that he continues to do in our life. I wish it was